Today we meet at Tarawara Museum of Art here in beautiful Healesville, where the ancestors of the Wurundjeri people have travelled for 60,000 years or more. And Tarawara is a real caretaker in the sense of looking after the spirits of our ancestors and has welcomed our community to this place just like it's our own. We also celebrate today the Looking Glass exhibition curated by Hetti Perkins, which is just an amazing array of works, and it takes you on a journey that will be very memorable. It's a memory for us that is not good, and is also a memory for non-Aboriginal people who experienced the terrible situation of uranium and mining. Some of the work that you're about to see will be quite frightening, but it's important for you to understand the messages beyond there. And our artists have done such an amazing job. A coalition of two beautiful women, and have brought together the many affrays that have been imposed on our community, and indeed the travels of many of non-Aboriginal people at the same time. We come from the oldest continuous living culture in the world. These managum are our belonging, and each of our communities have their own way of ceremony. We've started today with a smoking ceremony. The smoking ceremony is about cleansing for a new beginning. It's a new beginning where we should all work together so that none of what's happened in the past continues to happen as it is today. But it's also about returning the spirits of our ancestors back to this land, to the place where they should rest in peace. We also use the manigum to have welcome to country. Warren is the river white gum tree, and Jerry is the grub that lives in that tree. We invite you today to share with us by taking a leaf from this branch, and I'll do this on your behalf. This means that you are welcome to everything, from the tops of the trees to the roots of the earth. It also means that you join with us to honour the spirits of our ancestors who have nurtured this very land here at Tarawara Museum of Art for many, many thousands of years. We thank you, Nodkanwa, but it also means you now have a responsibility with us to continue that caring and nurturing of country so that today can be more better tomorrow, for the environment, for all the animals, for all the plants, for everything to become alive again. And Looking Glass features that in a beautiful way. The courage of artists, the way in which they've displayed and illustrated their intimacy not only with country but the pain of country and what's happened to it. So thank you for joining with me in this ceremony. My language is the Woiwurrung, Womenjakar, Wurundjeri Balak, Yemen Kundibik, and you are most welcome to the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. Notkanwa.
Welcome to Tarawara Museum of Art. My name is Victoria Lynn and I'm the director of the museum. I'd like to thank Aunty Joy Murphy Wandin AO for her very moving welcome to country. On behalf of all of us here today, we respectfully acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people on whose land we meet, and all communities across Australia. Looking Glass is an important and timely exhibition curated by Arunta and Kalkadoon Senior Curator Hetti Perkins. It brings together two of Australia's most acclaimed contemporary artists, Judy and Yhonnie Scarce. Judy Watson was born in Mundubbera, Queensland, and lives and works in Brisbane. And her Aboriginal matrilineal family are Yhonnie, whose country is in the northwest Queensland. Judy works from site, archives, collective memory to reveal history and place and country. Yhonnie was born in Woomera in South Australia and belongs to the Kukatha and Nukunu peoples. Her interdisciplinary practice explores the political nature and aesthetic qualities of glass and photography. So I'm delighted to be joined by all three of these wonderful women today for this live virtual celebration of an extraordinary exhibition. We're live and virtual and on Zoom because, of course, of the pandemic and the restrictions, and we long to get together again. I'd like to start with a question to Hetti, who has described this exhibition as both a lament and a love song for country. Hetti, can you explain what you mean by this dual understanding of country?
Yeah, thank you, Victoria, and thank you to Tarawara for hosting us, and Aunty Joy for the welcome as well. And I think Aunty Joy's welcome really does express in many ways what we talk about when we talk about a love country. That is something that is really embodied in the works of Judy and Yhonnie. And while we celebrate that, we also understand, that there are, many threats to our country, to our beloved, heartlands, our homeland. And I think that's something that both Judy and Yhonnie very astutely, creatively and imaginatively alert us to. And I think just looking at where you're standing, Victoria, at the beautiful Tarawara Museum, that lovely picture window behind you that is framing Yhonnie's works. I remember once you said to me, when you look out that window, it's not just about looking at the view, it's about understanding the view. And I think that's something that we all share as Australians, and particularly as Indigenous people. We love this country, but we also lament what has happened to it. And, what the kind of acts of violence and desecration that it's been subjected to in recent years. And so it's a sort of so that's why I think it means by it being a love song and a lament. These works are very poignant, they're kind of melancholic, but they're also very celebratory in that they, bring to the fore all the things that we kind of corporeal relationship we have with it. And, it's the land of our ancestors, it's the embodiment of us, really.
You've titled the exhibition Looking Glass, and this term comes from Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass. In what ways is this metaphor of the looking glass relevant to an Aboriginal sense of homeland?
Well, of course, Looking Glass is directly relevant to Yhonnie's work in the materiality of her work, but also in the way that both Judy and Yhonnie's works are elemental. It is that materiality, the combination of ochres, pigments, water, sand, fire, earth and air that they bring, that they create this wonderful fusion, this alchemy, to tell these stories through. That is, of course, one aspect of it. But it's also that in looking at these works, they're reflecting something back at us. There's stories of this country, the individual stories of the artists and their families, but those stories also have a greater resonance for, many, if not all, Indigenous people across this landscape. So it depends who's looking in the looking glass, if you like, but I think for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, there is a special significance in terms of the history of this country, the recent history, but also our long history of many thousands of years, as Aunty Joy mentioned in her welcome. And so they reflect that history to us, that beautiful tradition, that ongoing strength and also the resilience of our people and our culture. But for all Australians, they also reflect back to us, how we love this country. It's a sort of a way of sharing this love or understanding this love, understanding the view, but also reflecting back those kinds of recent stories like Maralinga, stolen generations, the massacres, things like that are just these unspeakable acts of violence against us and our country and our culture. And I think they're a very they're very prescient, very prescient works in that they kind of forewarn us of what might come, particularly when, for instance, our Prime Minister has just invested many, many millions of dollars in fast-tracking fracking in the Northern Territory. So, that's very close to Judy's country. And so, that the risks are real. The danger is real. And I think that's something that these works are. So for me, they have a sense of urgency. They are, they're like I think we've said in the catalogue, this is our sort of great Australian dream. The myth of the great Australian dream is just like a candle in the coming storm. And if we haven't learnt from Maralinga, what will it take to make people, our powers that be, if you like, realise the threat to our country, which means the threat to, our very existence. And I'll finish with saying, the looking glass, it reminds, when I was reading a bit about that and thinking about this show, I was very struck by the idea of, this character Alice, falling down this sort of rabbit hole or through the looking glass, whatever metaphor you want, and really finding themselves in this very strange, turvy world where the rules are all changed, where there's danger at every corner, and this kind of sense of powerlessness. And I think that's something that a lot of our people have felt, obviously, but also continue to feel in face of, a fairly flawed democratic process that favours, corporates and favours economy over culture.
Exactly, and when I think of the idea of looking glass, I'm reminded of the windows that surround the museum here at Tarawara and the views that are afforded our audiences. And we like to remind our audiences that it is not just a view, that this is a landscape that has a long history, an Aboriginal history, a colonial history, a history of devastation, a history of ecological fragility. And I think this is an exhibition that amplifies that desire on our behalf to ask people to think about that view and reflect upon themselves and their implication in looking at that view. I'd like to turn to Yhonnie now, if I may, and there are two extraordinary works at the beginning of the exhibition, Only a Mother Could Love Them and Fallout Babies. We see large black and white images accompanied by glass objects in the form of bush plums. Hetti's already mentioned Maralinga, but perhaps Yhonnie, you could talk us through the motivation and inspiration for these two extraordinary works.
I just want to begin as well to thank Aunty Joy for her beautiful welcome as well, and I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people where I live and work currently, and also my elders back home from the Gubba and Nukunu communities, and particularly the women in my family. So, and also to thank Hetti and Judy and yourself, Victoria. I think I love working with women in particular. So I'd like to just share my love for you guys. So I think particularly with this work, or those two works, were really important for me to return to my birthplace of Woomera. I was always sort of growing up a little bit embarrassed about being born out in the middle of nowhere, really, because the rest of my siblings had been born in the city. So, but as I got older, I found that I was really, quite interested in the history of that place. And I guess the more I thought about it, the more I realised how much it was involved in the nuclear tests in South Australia. So, and knowing that there were a lot of children that were affected by the nuclear tests as well. So over the last maybe 5 or 6 years, I've been going back and forth to Woomera and to visit the cemetery out there. So for people that are not familiar with that area, Woomera was it was a former rocket range. I think there are still some things going on out there, but everything is sort of very quiet. But the children in the cemetery are not Aboriginal, but they were part of, I guess, the shared history in terms of how Aboriginal women and non-Aboriginal women were affected. So the images are of some of the graves that you can find out there, a majority of them are of children. And the works that I've created to accompany those images are a reference to the Aboriginal children who are not documented. So Only a Mother Could Love Them is about the deformities that these poor babies were born with. And, you know, I guess people would have looked at them, you know, as if they were horrific beings. But some of them were born without mouths or jaws, spines, gaping holes in their bodies, and loss of limbs as well. And a lot of them passed away before they were even born, I think. So, and I've used blackluster in Only a Mother Could Love Them because to show the burnt nature of radiation poisoning as well, and the effect it has had on skin and organs. And then there are some holes in those bush plums as well to represent the deformities in the children. So that was made around the same time as Fallout Babies as well. So if you go onto the other side, there's a set of cribs, and they hold bush plums that are of a, I guess, ghostly appearance. So these children, as I believe, are deceased, but they're the children, you know, during different, I guess, different lifespans during gestational period of pregnancy. So there's the embryonic stage, maybe 3 or 6 month pregnancy, and then full term. And then, so it's talking about not those situations, but that situation of these children and the suffering that they had to endure, and it wasn't their fault. Yeah.
It's absolutely devastating. It's also a theme that continues throughout the show with your work, where you and Hetti have chosen to focus on the impact of the nuclear tests. There's another very important work in the exhibition entitled Glass Bomb Blue Danube Series 4. Can you tell us a little bit about the Blue Danube? Because obviously it's not the river.
Yeah. So the Blue Danube is it's one of the nuclear bombs that they tested in South Australia. So I think they tested numerous nuclear weapons, but I think the one that I was more, I guess, interested in was the Blue Danube, because there are different types, different shapes. They were small, they were big. So and that Danube is one of 8. So they do tend to show the different sizes, and I quite like the idea that they are different shapes. I guess, I don't know, maybe it's because I do look at objects slightly different, but the reason to make that work too is actually place that bomb in, place it in a way that people were able to recognise what it looked like. So, and inside, in that Blue Danube is a number of skeletal yams, which represent, how these bombs engulfed Aboriginal people, and how a lot of them we don't know how many have been deceased or killed as a result of those tests. So,
and continuing in that theme of looking at the bush plum and the native yams, and there's another amazing work in the exhibition called Hollowing Earth, where you've got a number of forms in the shape of bush bananas, and these works have been tinged with a kind of yellowy green colour. I think you actually used uranium to work with these forms. What's the process of making a work like Hollowing Earth?
That one, it was interesting because, the colour is actually slightly, slightly contains uranium. So the glass itself is meant to glow in the dark, but it doesn't. Well, I choose not to. But we worked with a granule because it's not safe enough to work with a talc, which I usually work with when I'm making glass. So there were various ways that I made that work, and I worked with two other glass blowers, Crystal Britcher and Georgia Juice, during that process, and we cracked it with water. We burnt the glass, which was really important, and that left gaping holes in the work as well. So it has different stages of mining, because when I made that work, I was thinking of Olympic Dam, which is on my country, not far from Woomera actually. So, and I guess going back to Hetty's comment about the government fast tracking mining and fracking as well, that there's this work Hollowing Earth references that I guess desecration of country, and what you're left with are gaping holes, but a lot of sickness as well. So the uranium was, not just a direct reference to uranium mines, but uranium is meant to stay in the ground. It's not meant to be exhumed and shared all over the world to make nuclear energy and nuclear weapons. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Yhonnie, behind me, of course, is the wonderful new work that we've commissioned for the exhibition entitled Cloud Chamber. It's a floating cloud of 1,000 glass yams. And this has also been inspired in part by the period of time we all spent together, short though it was, in Birmingham, in collaboration with the Icon Gallery. Can you talk through the inspiration for this work and the cloud chamber that you actually saw in Birmingham?
So, when I was in Birmingham, I visited the physics museum, I guess, at the University of Birmingham, and I had heard about the cloud chamber previously before I arrived in the UK. And I was quite surprised to actually find it. I didn't think I would, actually, because for people who are not aware of the Physics Museum, it's a small one, but they have a very interesting collection of objects that I guess physicists use to create, I guess, different tests and things like that. So I found this towards the end of my visit, found the cloud chamber in the back corner of this corridor. And it's quite a simplified object. It's a glass dome that is set in a small box with a garden hose. So, and it was used to move particles of uranium to figure out how they could create nuclear weapons, or nuclear energy. So I thought about it a little bit, about how the particles would have moved around, and I guess my residency was cut short, so I thought about, I guess, the history of where the nuclear energy began, and then particularly the formation of nuclear clouds. And I went back again to, I guess, my memory of visiting the breakaway bomb site at Maralinga. And I often look at the creation of the clouds for a gallery space, or to create a work that either references rainfall or weather patterns in a similar way, like in some of the clouds that I've made before, like Thunder Raining Poison and Death Zephyr. So this one was wanted to create some sort of cloud that was, I guess, as you entered the space, you get a sense of the neck of the cloud and the arms of the cloud. So it was directly after an explosion, or after the explosion. And because the breakaway bomb was, or the test was quite lie-lowing to the ground, it was set off by, from a tower. It imploded, so and created glass out there as well. So, and what I did find out in Birmingham was via an academic who mentioned that the glass didn't actually form on the ground. It was formed mid-air, and then it was sent back to the ground. So, so that, I guess, again, that made me think about the movement of particles within the cloud chamber.
Might jump in here, Yhonnie, and ask you, can you describe a bit more the breakaway site that has inspired this work, and as you say, talk about the appearance of glass and the use of glass in containing that radiation and so on? Yeah.
So if you visit the bomb site, you do see particles of glass, because originally there were sheets of glass all across the land, or I guess the site where the bomb was set off. And so part of the cleanup in the 90s removed majority of the glass and left these, I guess I call them raindrops a little bit, because they glisten in the sun, and they do look like, something that rain would have left on the ground. But as you stand at the marker where they have, I guess, left the concrete marker, you get an idea of how big the bomb was, or the test was, and you actually see a circle in the landscape, because I think that one in particular, for some reason, I think it was. Not that the others didn't, but this one, because it was quite close to the ground, it left quite a scar, regardless of whether it was a crater or not. But you get a strong sense of how big it was, because the landscape has been affected quite considerably. So and the vegetation doesn't grow very high, and never will, I think, unfortunately. So you see the trees off in a distance, and then you see this. It's like a football oval. That's how big it is. Yeah.
That's an incredible story, Yhonnie. I wonder if we could all share the screen now and open up the conversation between the three of you to just talk through any new insights you've really had about each other and each other's practice during this bumpy journey that we've had, beginning in Icon Gallery in March of this year and ending here at Tarawara at the end of 2020. Hetti, why don't you start off?
Thank you for sharing those stories, Yhonnie. And I guess the thing that I was surprised by, if you like, or sort of was a bit unexpected, was in bringing the two artists together, just how many connections there are and how intricate and complex, but also beautiful and subtle the connections between them and their works are. And of course, one of the works in the exhibition, which features the ears, Judy's cast ears, was made with the assistance of Yhonnie some years ago. And so I found fascinating all these serendipitous overlaps. The fact that obviously Icon's in Birmingham, and that's where Mark Oliphant, the Australian, did a lot of research, and where this kind of arms race was a key site for the arms race. And then of course Judy's family connections to the Britain, Ireland and Scotland, so it was all these, it was just this incredibly beautiful interweaving of all these stories, a bit like The String, of course, that Judy features so much in her work, this idea of, the string picking up bits of DNA and stories as it rolls and sort of, spools out over generations. So, it's kind of a long-winded way of saying that these amazing artists never cease to surprise me. I've worked with them both for a long time, and I'm always just continually, fascinated, surprised, delighted, and I just feel that their work is just, stronger together. United we stand, divided we fall. And so, seeing artists like Judy and Yhonnie work together, I think, is a very, very powerful statement, and to be backed up by someone like Aunty Joy, the way that she talks about their works, is, it's indisputable. So I'm just really privileged to have been, part of this whole experience.
Judy?
Hello, everyone. I also want to acknowledge traditional owners and thank Aunty Joy for the beautiful welcome, and shout out to all those wonderful women out there who are part of this project, and also, my matrilineal family, and just how strong they are together. So it's been wonderful working on the project, and as Hetti said, the first time I met Yhonnie, she jumped straight into helping me cast ears of people, which was a funny process, trying to find this dental alginate and make these little molds to cast the ears in, and doing that together. I think it was a great way to begin our working and collegiate relationship. And seeing her work, not that I've seen it in the current exhibition, but in other exhibitions, it's so beautiful and powerful and resonant, and I really look forward to seeing the show. And Yhonnie just thinks really deeply about things and has a really wicked sense of humour. And Hetti, I've known since about 1987. And when I first met her, it's like, who's that sassy girl there? She's just full of strength and conviction, but also just great in so many ways. Funny, very, very funny, and just a joy to work with. And I love the way that she curates things and places things, and she's got a very, very particular eye for the way that she, works within the site and thinks about the artist's work, and then just brings it to it. And Victoria, of course, we've worked together on a number of projects as well, the Art Gallery of South Wales, Spectre, etc., and of course the Venice Biennale. Who could forget that with you and Brenda and Hetti? So it's been a long and winding road, but a wonderful journey together. So great to be in the same space. Thank you.
I think there's an extraordinary synergy between Judy and Yhonnie's works, particularly the translucency, which I didn't think about in advance, but I think Yhonnie's work brings the translucency out in Judy's work. And Judy's, interest in culture and the threads of history brings out the deep research that is at play in Yhonnie's work as well. And Yhonnie, what's the experience been like for you? You're intending to go back to Birmingham at some point in the future when the pandemic lifts.
Yeah, I'll just try and run with it, I think, because I think it's interesting because I've admired Judy's work for a long time because I discovered her work at art school. So and then had the great opportunity to work with her on the ears as well in Adelaide during a residency as well. So, and also the connection to water is really important, and I come from desert people that meet the sea as well. So Gulgitha mob have connections to country that is related to the sea as well. So, and a majority of my family live in Sejuna, my extended family. So I'm very honoured to exhibit alongside Judy and work with Hetti again and work with yourself as well, Victoria. So I'm always, very honoured anyway. I think like it's something that I love spending time with people. I love the time that we spent in Birmingham together as much as it was a short one. And I value that time together with my mentors and my peers as well, because as Judy said, we are stronger together. And I think what I love about this exhibition is that despite being away from each other, we've come together and exhibited such a beautiful exhibition. And I do, intend to go back to Birmingham to continue that research and finish that residency after the pandemic, whenever that might be, yeah.
Judy, I'd like to turn to your work now. Your early works in the exhibition have responded to your matrilineal grandmother's one-year country. There's various shades of blue, turquoise, cobalt, indigo, and we also see certain shapes in the work, forms such as the Baylor shell, the spine-like form, and also the earliest work is called Waterline. Can you tell us a little bit about your grandmother's country and how it underpins this suite of early works?
Sure. Well, in 1990, that was when I went with my family. I actually had an Australia Council branch to go back out to country. And in fact, I'd been there in the mid-80s, but didn't realise at the time it was our country. And so going back out there with family and being shown bush foods by my grandmother, and my mother knew some of them as well. And then my uncle was pointing out and showing me middens and showing me some of the beautiful rock art sites and other really important sites in our area. I realised when I'd been there in the mid-80s, I'd walked across the top of the gorges and I felt there was something there, but actually the sites were down within the gorges, or I was walking over the top of, the stones, tall scatters and the midden shells of freshwater mussel shells, etc. And it's a beautiful subterranean blue-green water which flows from the Barkly Tableland, subterranean water. It's as old as dinosaurs. I mean, they say that, by the time the water pricks a little bubble on the surface coming through these amazing fissures within the limestone, it is the same water that dinosaurs have been drinking. And it's so tranquil, and it's like an oasis because it's surrounded by these red sandstone cliffs. It's quite dry country surrounding it, and you wouldn't guess until you walk up to it, until you see the line of trees, that there's these amazing cabbage tree palms, the sort of the beautiful figs and bush foods. There's so much water life. There's freshwater crocodiles and fish, and everybody should go there if they can. It's incredible to canoe up the gorge or sort of walk along it and just be in that place. And of course that's, it's real, as it's called, Budjamala, Rainbow Serpent Country, and it's got the edges of the rainbow and some of the rock art around there. And in fact, my grandmother asked her mother, Mabel Daly, once, what happened to the, these springs in the area? And her mother said, the rainbow dried it up. So that's within living memory of these women just talking about it, that, the rainbow, as in the rainbow serpent, dried it up. And it was because somebody had interfered with the springs at that place. Mm.
You've written that blue is the colour of memory. You write, blue is the colour of memory, the colour of water and sky, translucent and dense, dark beyond black, velvety, soft and porous. Blue is such a predominant colour throughout your work, and for this exhibition, Hetti has chosen all blue paintings with the exception of the 4 new ones, the ochre ones. Why is blue such a powerful colour for you?
I think it is quite transcendental. I mean, I love many other colours as well, but there is something about it. It does take me into a different space. So whether it is to do with water memory, I don't know, but I do feel like water is a conduit for me when I'm hand washing clothes, when, you know, sort of I'm swimming, anything to do with water. That's when I'm thinking and solving my problems and dreaming up new ideas. So I think that anything that relates to water and air and sky brings me back to it. I mean, it was interesting looking at our language, one year language, and looking at all the different names for water and how they are connected to sky and air as well.
There's a very disturbing work in the exhibition entitled 40 Pairs of Blackfellas Ears, Lawn Hill Station. It depicts a number of wax ears that have been nailed to the wall with rusty nails. I'm struck by the way that you and Yhonnie are continually doing deep research into very disturbing histories. Could you enlighten us to the story of Lawn Hill Station?
Sure. Well, there's a number of connections with our family. My great-great-grandmother Rosie escaped a massacre at Lawn Hill. We think it must be in the maybe the 1880s. And that's detailed in John Roberts' book, Frontier Justice, and also in Timothy Bottom's book, Conspiracy of Silence. And I was told about this at my grandmother Grace Isaacson's funeral by our family members, which include Shirley McNamara, the amazing weaver, and also her mother, Ruby Saltmere. And they told us about Rosie's escape from the massacre, about how she hid under a windbreak and was speared with a bayonet through the upper part of her body. And she and another young girl escaped down to water, hid in the water, put stones on their bellies to keep them under, and then breathed through reeds. And in fact, I only just saw the film High Ground, and you have to see it. It's an amazing depiction of this feat of survival. So something so fragile and delicate, was a sort of an instrument of survival for my great-great-grandmother, and that's why our family are here. And then back in 1993, when I was working with Hetti and Brenda and others at Bamali, there was an exhibition, Rihanna Perispheria, and I went to the library, University of Sydney, just looking for things around, I might find something. Opened this book, Voice of the Wilderness, opened it straight up to this page that talked about how, this young woman, Carolyn Cray, rode out to the wilderness beyond the frontiers, and she said the blacks were not the only savages, because at Lawn Hill Station there were not less than 40 pairs of blackfellas' ears nailed to the slab hut homestead as retaliation for spearing of cattle. And that's when it sort of hit me, and it was like, wow. And I wrote, it drowns 100 years, because it's that's my grandmother's mother's country, and it goes down through blood and memory and soaks into the ground. And I think when you see things which are, it's from the past, but it's actually within your present, within your family, that country is still there, and when you walk out there, it is speaking, and it's rooted by those histories. So it's something that I felt very deeply then, and my grandmother had just died when I went down to Adelaide to the Sasa Gallery to make the work with Yhonnie. We had the residency with Nikki Cumston, and that's when I thought, I think it's time just to tell that story. So that's why the ears and the windbreak and what I called the salt in the wound work was made in response to those stories.
It's extraordinary, and I think what the exhibition shows is how your work is expressed across so many different forms, not just painting, of course, but installation and video as well. I'd like to now, Judy, finally turn to the group of works that you made specifically for the exhibition in 2020, and in particular ask about that connection to the landscape in the UK. A number of these works have a kind of ghostly presence of a standing stone circle. And so much of this exhibition is about walking on country. Can you talk through what it meant for you to see the ways in which people in the UK were interacting with their own standing stones?
Yeah, it was delightful actually, just watching people being very playful and respectful, but at the same time very warm and, you know, having picnics, you know, around the site. I saw these strange dye marks. I didn't know what they were on the stones, some of them. And then I realised it was on the back of the sheep's, you know, where the sheep's wool had been dyed. So it's from the sheep, you know, rubbing their bottoms, you know, against the stones. There were dogs coming in and, you know, pissing on them, people sitting on the stones. There were just, there were people really trying to feel the presence of the stones at various sites, and they were always in beautiful sites, which of course is the same for our country in Australia. Where there are Aboriginal sites, often it's in a really beautiful place. You've got good views all around you. It's a place where you can really feel and listen. Resources might be close at hand. And I was just reading in the paper today something interesting where the Jabwurrung trees, the federal court upholds Jabwurrung's Western Highway, you know, overturns Susan Lay's decision on scarred trees. And Justice John Griffiths drew a comparison between the decision to upgrade a road near Gallipoli in Turkey as a desecration of something which has come to assume enormous cultural significance here back in Australia. And then another quote, why is a highway that's in close proximity to something that's accepted to be a significant Aboriginal object a mistreatment of the tree? And if you think of that in terms of Aboriginal cultural sites within Australia, and you think what happened with Rio Tinto, you know, with the desecration and explosion of, you know, Juukan Gorge, why do we not have the same respect for Aboriginal sites, Aboriginal country, places of significance which are thousands and thousands and thousands of years older than, you know, places like Stonehenge or Avery or on the Orkney Islands that I went to? Why are they revered and respected, and why isn't our own culture here in Australia given the same level of deep respect and reverence? So that's what my work is thinking about. I love seeing ancient sites in every country, and I always have a deep respect for it. And why is there a miseducation about what's old and what's important? So that's what the work is sort of about, really.
That's such a powerful statement, Judy, and it also reminds me of the fact that we seem to know more about, you know, Chernobyl than we do about Maralinga. It's a similar story, isn't it? I'd like to thank each of you for your time today and for this exquisite and haunting exhibition. I'd also like to thank our major exhibition partner, the Balnaves Foundation, and our collaborating gallery Icon in Birmingham. I thank Nets Victoria for their support of the exhibition and for organising a significant tour of this exhibition around Australia. And I also acknowledge the many private and public lenders to the exhibition, the artists' agents, the museum sponsors and the Australian Ballet. And it now gives me great pleasure to welcome Ella Havelka, a Wurundjeri woman who will premiere her work Fragmented. This is a dance response to Looking Glass, developed with an original score composed by Eric Avery and Ronald Smith. Ella's dance career has seen her perform with the Australian Ballet and also with Bangarra Dance Theatre, and we thank Ella for her generosity in creating this moving work. Thank you for joining us today.